Thank you. So we're gonna pick up with, I don't mind having not recorded the thing about the guy's losses. So what we want to look at here is a fan retrace. So what a fan retrace is, thank you, Adam. What a fan retrace is a pullback from a harmonic wave convergence, which tells us it's actually retracing. Now in this particular case, this was a 10-minute harmonic wave convergence. You can see the 30-minute wave dangling around in the upper third, but this pullback might have been cycling the 30-minute wave, but this convergence here was a 10-minute convergence. So the first thing for a fan retrace to be considered a fan retrace, in order to get the retrace part of it, it has to come from harmonic wave convergence. We do not have such a thing as a fan retrace off a fan retrace off a fan retrace. That's going to end up being a cycle. We don't want to play with that. Take my toys and go home. So a fan retrace can only come from a convergence. So this is a pretty textbook looking move. I have a convergence, I have a retrace, I go to my higher high, and another convergence. So we have another 10-minute wave convergence here. So convergence to convergence. Looks flat on the charts in the indicator, but a convergence, a retrace, and it goes to the higher high. Now why it's called the fan, well, self-evidentry. Look at the distance between the 10, the 5, the 3, and the 1 goes perfectly to extreme. So on the hook back of that 1-minute wave coming back from extreme, that's our entry into what's called, in this case, a buy into the sell. So fan retraces are essentially what you might have learned or heard in the market as pullback trades. It's just we have precision, as you can tell. Now this is multi-wave over here. Because I want to get everybody on the same plate, on the same page as to what a fan retrace is. Bronze traders don't recognize this. Silver traders understand what a fan retrace is. Well, conceptually, academically, intellectually. So you've had, 50 to 100 of these trades, it's a little bit easier to talk about it than it is to talk the action. So there are some attributes about this that are pretty cool. So first of all, we have this nice fan. The waves fan out in order as you see them here, 10, 5, 3, 1. The better looking fans come from, totally across the page. The better looking fans don't have this sawtooth action coming down. The better fans have even distribution in the fanning of the waves. The better fans come all the way down to extreme. The buy into the sell, there you have it. So generally, we're going to talk about why we really need 8 to 10 pips of pullback here in order to take that trade right here as a buy into the sell. So now we're going to jump into some hot and heavy stuff here. So we have a convergence here. Now look at what I've drawn here. So in this case, the 10-minute wave was retracing. In this case, we have a 30-minute snake. So we have a convergence, and then the 30-minute wave stayed flat, which means what? There's a lot of upward pressure right here. There's a lot of upward pressure even though price is pulling back. The pressure is still really great up, which is why the 30-minute wave doesn't budge and it stays flat up there. All the other waves are pulling back in fan order. Obviously, what you really have here is, think of them as springs. And the lower the wave, the less strong that spring is, so it can be pulled back farther. 10-minute wave is pretty rigid spring, so I can only pull it back so far. My son respringed his trampoline last week. a little spring pulling tool. And even though I told him, he forgot. So he started at one end and just was going around clockwise. And what ended up happening, of course, is you pull all the tension, and by the time he got to the last third of the trampoline, instead of there being about 5 inches for the spring to cover, there was like now 9 inches. So he learned the hard way. Now he has to pull that spring out 9 inches. So he finished and he was like, dang, yeah, good bicep work there. So, thank you, Tim. So we have harmonic wave convergence up here as price was moving up. And we have a pullback. And in that pullback, the 30-minute wave stays flat. Lower level waves pull back. And we come to this extreme here. When we get to this point, my 1-minute wave is here, just as you see it like this. That is entry for a buy into the sell, assuming I have 8 to 10 pips of pullback. Now, I'm going to explain why we want 8 to 10 pips of pullback. Can I take this trade? If this was a 5-pip channel, we're really kind of short. Can I take that trade if it's only a 5-pip pullback? I can, but I'll show you the risk you're running into. So what we're really doing, once we know this is, in this case, a retrace, or in this case, a snake, so we know that this is not a cycle. In other words, we're just not going to see this 10-minute wave come down and red, yellow. We're not going to see this 10-minute wave cycle down. We're not going to see the 1-minute wave, you know, just go top to bottom as it cycles the 10-minute wave down. The reason we know this is going to go to a higher high, or it should, is because this was a snake. All right. So what happens now is if it's a snake, if it's a retracement, the pullback is going to be a corrective move. If you think of Elliott wave, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 1 to 2 move and the 3 to 4 move are corrections. What happens when that correction's complete? Impulsively, we move back up to a higher high. Correction's complete, we move back to a higher high. And that's an impulsive move. Very quick, it's a burst. These are great moves to get in. That's why pullback trading can be very good. All right. But per Elliott wave, a correction takes the shape of A, B, C. The problem we have, guys, is this, and gals. The problem we have is that in this distance, you cannot always see the ABC structure. We can't get farther down than a 1-minute chart. So if we're looking at our 1-minute chart, you know, and as I've had fun explaining sometimes, why is that? Well, I'll tell you why. Should have put this on here. So let me do this. Interesting way of numbering, huh? So what can happen, and does happen, is I have a candle that forms, and I'll just draw it big, and it starts dropping, and it comes down to here. That's my one wave. It retreats, leaving a wick to here. There's my 2 wave. Then it aggressively moves down to my 3. Retreats, leaving a wick. My 4 wave is done. And then comes down here and closes. I just did a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inside that one candle. So sometimes we look at a chart and we'll see 2 candles and you've got an ABC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ABC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You just don't see it as it's happening. So I'll answer that in a second. Good question about the pullback. So the problem is in 5 pips, in 10 pips, even in 15 pips of pullback, we don't know if at this point here, i.e. at this point here, i.e. at this point here, if that's the A or the C. It could be the A, and we're going to go up to B and come down and go to C. That could have already been the A, B, C. So those points right there, I don't know what it is. That's why I say it's the A or the C. I don't know. I have to play it as if it's the C. Because if it's the C, it's going to take off impulsively to the 3. If I try and play this game of let me figure out what this is, the next thing I know it's moved off 6, 7 pips and I've missed my chance to get in that trade. So I have to play it as if it's the C. It very well may be the A. So here's my rule on this. So look, Mark helped me a month or so back. He said, there's certain times where you call things rules. Maybe you better call them guidelines instead. And his point is very well taken. There are times where, I say it's a rule because at this point over a volume of trades, I don't do it that way anymore. I don't do that thing. So I call it a rule. In that case, it's an avoidant rule. Or I do it a certain way, and therefore it's a take this action rule. So I'll repeat it as a rule because I don't trade it, or I do trade it based on that rule. But in reality, as a coach teaching a system, I have to call it more of a guideline, to be fair. So here's the thing. What I do and what I would recommend to you is to take this trade. If I've had my 8 to 10 pips of pullback, so at this point, I'm 8 pips here. I'll take that, buy into the sell. What's that mean? It means I'm going to buy this trade until it gets up to the next convergence point, which is the sell. So I'm buying into the sell. These are easy pips. These pullback trades are easy pips. So because this can be the A or the C, if it's the A, what's going to happen to me if this is 8 pips? Almost inevitably, this move is going to go up a little. I'm going to get in the trade. It's going to go up a little, turn around, come back, and take me out at my -1. Or I can get -1 here. And it's then going to continue down until now it is at the C. So my rule is this. I don't take this first trade unless I'm committed to take the second trade. Let me say that again. I'm not going to take that first trade unless I'm going to take the second trade. This is a strategy. It's my plan. I execute that. I don't wuss out when I take the first trade and I get stopped out at -3. Oh, Steve said fan retraces are good trades to take. And I just went -3. Oh my God. Gonna have to sell the house. I got a -3. So what happens when they get that -3? They don't take trade number 2. Now look how stupid that is. I hate to be so emphatic and get so, put the passion in the enunciation, the inflection, or whatever the word is. But oh my gosh, if they took this trade not knowing it was the A or the C because they were hoping it was the C, they were hoping they were going to catch this impulsive move, but they didn't know if it was the A or the C, and now they find out it was the A, but down here now they know it's the C, and they're not going to take the trade. I know it's the C here. I had hoped it was here, but I took this trade, and now I know it's C. I'm not going to take it. Why don't I take it? Because my little whiny butt is all discombobulated because I got a -3. See, do the math. So what I can tell you over here in this little matrix on the right, and I must have written this out 100 times in the last 6 months, which is why I take great pleasure not having to write it out now because it's already there. For a 10-minute pullback, most of the time, my first entry is going to go, and it ends up on 10-minute pullbacks. That's about 65% of the time. When it comes down and goes to the C, that's most of the time that goes back up 30% of the time. And yes, that leaves 5%. It's just a little hair under that by my statistics, by my records. A little less than that, I'm going to lose on this one too. But what that means is collectively, between this first trade and the second trade, 95% of the time I'm off to a higher high. Yeah, this is a pullback against the 30-minute wave. I'm sorry. It's still 1-2. It's just it's a little less. For the 30, it's a little bit more like 50 on the first one and 45 on the second. It's still 95. It's still a 5% chance of losing, but collectively the two have about a 95% chance of moving up. But just, look, do what you want. Make up your own rules. Just don't trade in conflict. See, when you trade in conflict, it's like you don't deserve to win. How can you expect to win if you're trading in conflict? What do I mean by trading in conflict is you're taking a trade here not knowing which one it is, and here you know what it is, but you're not going to take that trade. That's trading in conflict. The logic fails. Spock would have a heart attack. So you want to say, I'm not going to take trade number 1 unless if I lose it, I'm also prepared to take trade number 2. And now we're going to talk about why 8 pips. If this pullback point here, well, let's come back to this. What happens if I go -3 here? If this thing pulls back and my -1 stop loss, so I go out -3, and now it comes down here, I'm essentially risking 3 again here, aren't I? But I consider this a combo trade. Remember, 95% of the time, one or the other is going to get me up to a higher high. So I treat it as a combo. If I treat it as a combo, if I'm risking 3 again, I have to add the 3 I already lost. So essentially, if I'm taking a trade down here, I am technically risking a total of 6, for which 5% of the time I will lose. The other 19 out of 20 times, I'm going to the higher high. But the reality is it's 6. We also know something about charts in that what's going on here is my least expectation for this move would be a double top. I don't know how that red thing just reignited itself. So my least expectation would be a double top, i.e. this should go to a higher high, but we know it might just end there and give us a little small double top. So since it's not worth our time for the most part, even with the small scale we have, to be trading anything less than 2 to 1, if I'm risking 6 down here, how far does it have to be to my double top as my minimum gain? 12 pips. So I'm risking 6 here. 2 to 1 would be 12. In order for this to be a 12 pip move from here upward, this has to be 8 to 10. So we kind of re-injure. See, this is analysis. This is doing a little exploring. This is pushing the math just a little. Yes, pull back from a 10 or a 30. So what this 8 to 10 pip pullback guarantees me is if this ends up being the A and I go -3 and it pulls down and now I'm risking 6, it's going to be at least 12 pips up to a double top. It might go way beyond that. It might go up to 15. Well, now I'm 3 to 1 if I'm risking 6, or 18. Now I'm 3 to 1 instead of just 2 to 1. That's great. But I'm a conservative trader. So if you're talking about what's my possibility for success, I'm not going to say, oh, this might go up 80 pips. It might. But, what's the minimum it should go? If this is an ABC after a correction, pretty much the worst thing I should get is a double top. So that's what I'll do my math on. I want 12 pips because I'm risking 6. That's got to give me my 2 to 1. If this is going to be 12 pips from here up, this has to be at least 8 pips down. If it's less than 8 pips, it's not worth it. I'm not saying you can't get pips. I'm just saying it's not worth it. And my gosh, don't have a slide on this, so I'll throw it in right here. We talk about 85.15 to try to kind of put it in the terms that an old paradigm trader would look at. We have 85.15. This weighting or this relationship is really more about my total pips versus my -3s as I would see things at a minimum. We can't measure wins and losses in terms of the old paradigm because we don't have losses. -3 is not a loss. That's just slush. Because for every -3, once you start trading the system, you're going to exit trades manually at +3. You're going to exit trades at +4. You're going to get taken out at -3. This is called slush. A loss would be a -10. This stuff, once you start trading, the slush becomes positive. So it even adds to your wins. But we don't have this thing called a loss like the old paradigm understood. And if, look, we'd be a fool to go into a group, go into some Facebook group and say, oh, we don't have losses in our system. Oh, you sound like the biggest scammer out there ever. Who doesn't have losses? We have -3s, but that's not a loss. That's kind of like a settled lack of success. So what that means is there will be sometimes you can have a 4-pip pullback and you luck out and hit the C. This ends up even in 4 pips, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ABC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you hit the C and it goes up for 25 pips. Steve told me not to trade these and I just made 25 pips. See, that's exceptions. You can't live on those. That's a lottery ticket trade. I don't worry about the times where I have discipline because I feel fulfilled by having discipline. I don't get pips in the bank at the end of the month, for discipline points. I get pips in the bank at the end of the month because of discipline. So when I exercise it, I feel good about it. And I don't care how that trade turns out because I already know the statistics. Over time, I'm going to have enough pips. Steph Curry doesn't worry about the times he takes a three-pointer and misses. He knows he's going to make most of the ones he shoots. He keeps shooting. Don't worry about the ones you miss. Babe Ruth led the league in home runs, also led the league in strikeouts. So there will be times when the rule will actually do something that it wasn't supposed to do. But you can't base your trading off that, guys. That, a good trader stacks probabilities. And because something that wasn't supposed to work ended up working, that shouldn't shift how you trade. Because now you're going to be all over the board. Next time it comes along, you're going to say, oh, remember last time I saw it went 50 pips. I went 4 pips of pullback. This looks like such a... Guess what? The pullback that is 4 pips and the pullback that is, make up a big number, 17 pips, will look like that, both of them. This is what I say. You have to understand, this is a relative channel. It has nothing to do with the absolute scale of price. So there will be times it pulls back 4 pips. There will be times it pulls back 8 pips. There will be times it pulls back 17 pips. And the fan retraces are going to look the same in all of those. Boom, boom, boom. I have to put a disqualifier up because of the absolute realities of price. I'll take the 8 pull. I'll take the 17. Those are great buys into the sells. Now, in terms of the waves itself, this is typically what happens. You know, I have some degree of pullback to an extreme, just like we see, and then it moves up some, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be a little, comes back down. It could be a little bit more, comes back down. The bottom line is this is the second pullback to an extreme from this convergence. So we talked about what a retrace is. We talked about what the fan is. We talked about why it's called a buy into the sell, or upside down, a sell into the buy. We know we want to have that 8 pips minimum of pullback before we take it. And we know if we take that first trade, we have to be wedded, committed to taking the second trade. So that's how you deal with fan retraces. You've got your numbers down here. So for 30-minute trades, 10-minute trades, where they're pulled back, you know, or the 10-minute snaking, the 30-minute snaking, 240, I will take the first pullback like this off of a 240 convergence. 240 means not just the 30 is up there, but our 240 wave is too, which is our 4-hour wave. So it was a 4-hour convergence as well, and the 4-hour snaking along with the 30. So on those, I will take this first one because there are times where the 4-hour wave will come right down and tag that 38.2% retracement and then take off impulsively after that. There are also times where it does this. And I'm not interested in, you know, being a collector of -3s just to get a buy into the sell. So I will take this first one. If it doesn't go, I am done. I'm trying to do a buy into the sell until that 4-hour wave, until there's another convergence. Could be a 30 back, you know, if the 30 pulls down and moves back up. But I'm not going to just chase these extended retracements on this thing. Okay. Any questions about fan retrace? We got our guidelines. We know the math and the statistics, and we know what to do. The biggest mistake that traders have is they take this trade, they go -3, and then they don't take this trade because they're still just not very happy. So we're good on fan retraces. Yes, but we have to make sure we understand it here first. Good question, though, Ross. Let me see, where am I? All right, so let's look at something here a little fun, I think. Just depends on the slide. So this would be a case where peak 3 saves you some T4s. We call it T4 when you enter a trade and as soon as you enter it goes against you. So we have a 1-minute wave. It's almost at extreme. So I would have traders that would take that because it's fanning out pretty nice. 10, 5, 3, 1. And so there would be an entry, you know, from the looks of it, you know, we're probably here. Let me sharpen up my pencil. And what happens, that means, is this moved up, and I got T forward, -3. Type 4 trade, meaning it's like, it shouldn't, this really isn't a hyperextended run. Again, Mark pointed that out to me, that I say that. I've kind of made them synonymous. This is just a too early move. I got my buy into the sell here thinking I'm going to go to the higher high, and because I saw the fan, nice fan retrace coming off of a convergence. Convergence. Nice evening star there for the reversal on top of it being a harmonic wave convergence. And so it pulls back, I get the fan, I enter the trade. That's what we would do in multi-wave. -3. It starts to go up, comes back a second time. She says, oh, 95% of the time, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Starts to go up. Well, you don't see it, but this is going to fail. -3. What about peak 3? We're almost at that same extreme. We never get the hook back. Let's pretend we did. Nobody there telling me to take a trade. Comes down a little bit more. We're starting to get the hook back come up. You can see it rising above the extreme line there. I don't have everybody agreeing with me. There's no trade. So on this second one here that we went -3, -3, I haven't yet to take a trade here because my guys didn't tell me to get in this thing. They said don't get in this thing. That's what TAB29 does. It gives you a little bit more assurity that it's not going to go -3 on you. Yeah. For most fan retraces, especially for a newer TAB29 trader, I would say in a standard fan retrace like we're showing here, I would say you need to use peak plus trend bars. I'm going to show you some examples here in a few minutes where that's not the case. Let me see my time. Stay on my time management, even though I missed the first 5 minutes of that recording. Okay. Whoops, getting down here pretty fast. So what? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to bring up a subject that some of you have intentionally avoided, and the reason some of you have intentionally avoided it is that's just a little bit of ego saying, I don't need to mess with that. And that is trend lines. Now, you don't have to be Tom DeMark, guru of technical analysis in the trading realm to draw trend lines. Yeah, half the room leaves. A trend line, guys, is simply connecting two dots. And I think if you gave them a ruler, I think your first or second grader could probably do it. And so I can have a scenario like this where all I have to do is I have two dots, two peaks, I can draw the trend line. Now, I will say, again, from trading experience, this trend line becomes stronger when these are wicks that go up and tag it. And the bigger the wick, the better. As I've said many times, I want to consider this my little recon squad, and they sent out their advanced scout to check out the enemy territory, and he comes back and says, no go, there's too many guys there. Let's look for another weak spot in their perimeter. The bigger the wick, the better strength that gives that trend line. Does that analogy help a little, or metaphor, or whatever that is would be called? It doesn't mean it's not a valid trend line if it's just a touch, but it's stronger when you have wicks. The reality is it does take 2 touches to generate that trend line. And after that, then I can access that trend line with price. Trend line comes down, price comes up, another wick. Well, that is my trade. But I have to have these guys here first. Now, we also know that you can draw pitchforks. And depending on how well that pitchfork is established, or if I'm using what's called a traditional pitchfork right out of the gate, if I'm doing a traditional pitchfork, most of the time my first touch up to a pitchfork line is tradable. A trend line drawer has to miss that trade number 1. A trend line drawer has to miss trade number 2. He's just got his second dot, so now he knows where to draw the line. The pitchfork trader on a traditional pitchfork can be taking all of these trades. The trend line drawer only gets this third one. So I like to draw pitchforks. Trend lines are going to break this thing wide open for you in so many ways. And what we're going to do is take a quick break, and we're going to come back and look at trend lines. And I'm going to give most of you, some of you have already seen this that I've been working with, but I'm going to give most of you the biggest aha you've ever seen in trading. And you might have seen it before, but you've not been able to use it consistently. But I'm going to show you something that's just going to bust tab 29 wide open for you. So that's coming up at 11 o'clock. Please stay tuned. So go grab 5 minutes. We'll be right back with part 4.